Hello, everyone. This is Shauna, and I'd like to come to you tonight with the inaugural episode of Reading My Shelves, Season 3. This is Pandemic Season 3. These shelves are my extended Goodreads shelves, not just my personal shelves. And I read a book the first week of the new year that I was expecting to be more of an uplifting, more of a feel-good book than it actually was, which is not to say that it was bad. It just wasn't quite what I expected. But it got me thinking about the question of the value of reading and can a book change a life? And I also had some thoughts that um, it depends on the person, the circumstance, and the book in question. So let me show you now the book that I read. The book that I read this last week was called Reading with Patrick, A Teacher, a Student, and a Life-Changing Friendship by Michelle Kuo. Michelle Kuo, at the time of this, the time that this book focuses on is a student teacher from Kalamazoo, Michigan. She's, through a series of circumstances, she finds herself in the Teach for America program. She's teaching in the Mississippi Delta, very socioeconomically depressed area. And she's not having much success. Her student body is predominantly Black, and she's in a school where the kids get sent when the district has nowhere else to send them. So they have very few resources and very few expectations about what their futures are going to be like. There's very few opportunities in this area. And she comes in and she wants to make a difference. And initially what she thinks, because she has a background in social justice and activism, and she's an immigrant from Taiwan, the child of immigrant parents. So she was born in the US to immigrant parents, and she feels like she can identify with them. So she creates this environment of like all these African-American heroes, people like Martin Luther King and Booker T. Washington. And she finds out eventually that that just doesn't work. It doesn't work the way she expected. And she changes tactics a bit. And in her second year, she meets a student named Patrick. And Patrick really responds to her. He begins to improve and he starts reading. And part of the early aspects of this book, after you've kind of gotten to know Michelle a bit and seen her mission in the Delta, is the emphasis that she has in this class on student reading. She decides that she's going to find out what titles are popular with her kids, what titles are popular with African-American kids. And so she gets all the authors that she can find, and she buys books for the school that she actually gets the school to pay for. They're very skeptical, but to their surprise, the kids start reading them. Now, the thing about this book, and this is a bit spoilery, so if you want to stop the video right now, you can. But the thing about this part of the book is that, yes, it makes a great deal of difference for these kids in the short term. Patrick eventually goes to jail. It's a very not unusual, but you wouldn't expect Patrick to do something like that. He actually kills someone. There is extenuating circumstances. He's he's a teenager when he kills this person, and there were, like I said, extenuating circumstances to it. He serves his sentence, he gets out, and the book focuses on not only her teaching in the Delta and then her years after the Delta, but she goes back to the Delta after a stint in law school, and she remediates Patrick in a sense. She reads poetry with him. She reads all kinds of literature with Patrick. And it shows that you find depths in Patrick that you wouldn't find otherwise. Does it stick? Maybe, maybe not. It certainly isn't the transformative experience that certain other memoirs have. And I thought of two other memoirs that I'm going to share that I've previously read that remind me of this book. But it does show that even if the change is not permanent, so to speak, it's a change that's indelible and a mark that stays with you regardless. So does a book change a life? Maybe. In Patrick's case, it wasn't a permanent change. But let me show you another couple of teacher memoirs, one that is more well-known, one that maybe less so. Let me share another book here. I'm going to share this. This book is the book that you might know. It's called The Freedom Writer's Diary by Erin Gruel. This book chronicles some time in the life of teacher Erin Gruel. She was a teacher at Wilson High School in Long Beach, California in 1994. And she came to Wilson at a time when Wilson was very troubled. It was a very ethnically diverse school, and there were a lot of protests going on in California at the time over Proposition 187, which had to do with how immigrants, illegal immigrants in particular, were to be treated. And a lot of the kids in her classes came from troubled backgrounds, a lot of gang violence, a lot of broken families. And she, what happened was she came into the classroom and she saw one of her students passing around a caricature of one of the other students. And she told them that that was how the Holocaust started, and nobody knew what the Holocaust was. So she, from that time, went on a mission to educate these kids and try to find literature. She was an English teacher, like Michelle Kuo was an English teacher. Erin Gruel was an English teacher, and she decided to focus on memoirs that had to do with war and conflict. So she had the students read memoirs like The Diary of Anne Frank, and also Night by Elie Wiesel, among others. And she started a poetry, I'm sorry, they wrote poetry, but they wrote other things as well. They wrote short pieces about their lives, and she eventually taught them to write about their experiences. And a lot of those kids that were involved in that program, there were about 150 kids over the years, a lot of them graduated from high school and turned their lives around because of it. Erin taught for 4 years, and then she left Wilson High School and went to California State University, Long Beach, where she became a professor, and now she works in public policy, and she's a podcaster and a speaker, and she talks about equality and incarceration. So this this book shows that if you find the right literature to reach the kids and you have the right kids, that it can be life-changing. Now there's one other book that's kind of in the middle of that. So you have kind of the partial success that didn't make it all the way in Patrick, and then you have sort of the glowing success of the Freedom Riders. But you also have, let me show you this book. You also have another one, which, let me see if I can find it. Where's my screenshot of this? This one here. This book is a book that I read some time ago. It's called Shakespeare Saved My Life, 10 Years in Solitary with the Bard. And like Patrick in Reading with Patrick, this book tells the story of Indiana inmate Larry Newton, who was incarcerated when he was 17 for the murder of another person. And there were, again, he had some accomplices, some help, but he didn't have sort of the sensitivity that Patrick had. He certainly came from a more traumatized background where Patrick was more socioeconomically depressed and didn't have a lot of opportunities and a lot of intervention in his life. Larry had a lot of abuse and trauma, so that plays into that. Shakespeare Saved My Life documents Larry's participation in a program that Laura Bates started to teach Shakespeare behind bars. And Larry really responded to that. He, prior to his participation in the program, he was violent, he was offensive, and he was known in prison as being one of the most dangerous inmates. He regularly was placed in solitary confinement for long periods of time, and he was often in the supermax, which is the most severe or the most restrictive confinement that you can be in. It's like solitary confinement within solitary confinement. It's maximum security within solitary. And he spent 10 years there in that particular area. And he had some ups and downs, but overall, if you read the course of this book, you follow Larry's journey and you see how not only he, but a lot of the other inmates who participated, through looking at Shakespeare plays and looking at the behavior of other characters, they're able to see their own behavior and analyze good outcomes and bad outcomes and why they are the way they are and what a lack of self-knowledge can do. And Laura Bates, in part, writes this book to try and bring out Larry's story. He, in the process of that, writes commentaries, observations of different Shakespeare plays that are used as part of the curriculum in the prison. That's how far he gets, actually. And he's still, to this day, Larry Newton, for legal reasons, even though his sentence has tried to be set aside multiple times. He took a plea when he was a teenager to reduce his sentence from the death sentence to life in prison. And there has been an ongoing argument as to whether or not a juvenile who didn't fully understand the long-term ramifications of his decision, should be held to a life sentence, given how much change the prison system even documents in his behavior and in his demeanor while he's been in prison. But it's highly unlikely that Larry Newton will ever get out of prison. But he is currently still serving in prison in Indiana. So did he sort of gain the freedom that sort of the Freedom Riders had? No. Is this a totally, completely happy ending? No, it's not. However, Larry Newton definitely shows personal growth and increased maturity that, for example, some of the kids in Michelle Kuo's class fail to demonstrate when they drop out after she leaves Arkansas. So can a book change a life? Maybe. Given the right circumstance, the right mix of opportunities and the application to the person. But it does, all three of these books show what the power of literature and connecting with the right book can do. So I hope that you enjoyed this little discussion and these three little read-alikes. And I hope that you'll consider, if you like teacher memoirs or you're interested in restorative justice at all, or even just compelling memoir, that you'll consider one or all of these. You can consider Reading with Patrick by Michelle Kuo, or The Freedom Riders by Erin Gruel, or this book, Shakespeare Saved My Life by Laura Bates. I'll have the information in the description box, and I hope you enjoy. And until next week, when I have another video for you on the second book I'm reading for the year, I will talk to you very soon. Stay healthy, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you very much.